Hi, you're listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction. We're your hosts, Amber and Dan.
Follow us on Instagram at Dusk to Dawn Podcast. Please rate our show wherever you're listening, and let's get started.
Reef.
I think you should keep that in. Welcome back, everybody. We are in our second Psycho book of this month, called Psycho, following up on Victorian Psycho, and will be followed by American Psycho. But now we are into the OG, the classic.
Just Psycho.
This is Psycho, the book. And we also watched Psycho, the movie, which we will talk about because they're so... I want to sound smart. They're so inextricably linked. Is that right? Inextricably?
I guess so.
We'll be talking about the book and the movie today. And
mostly the book, though.
Mostly the book?
Yeah, we'll see.
Let's get into it. Robert Bloch was a prolific American writer who wrote hundreds of short stories and over 20 novels, usually crime fiction, science fiction, and most influentially horror fiction, including Psycho, his sixth novel. He was one of the youngest members of the Lovecraft Circle. Lovecraft was Bloch's mentor and one of the first to seriously encourage his talent, which is absolutely crazy. We just talked about, what did we do?
The Ballad of Black Tom.
Ballad of Black Tom was a couple episodes back. Go check that out. This was towards the end of Lovecraft's life. They started corresponding in the 30s, and Lovecraft passed away in I think it was 1937, and Robert Bloch was just a teenager at the time. But before I continue with Bloch, one cool thing that I read about is within their correspondence, Bloch asked if it would be okay if he had a character based on Lovecraft that die in one of his stories. And Lovecraft was like, sure, you can do that. And then Lovecraft wrote a story with a character based on Bloch who was also murdered. So that's sweet.
That'd be fun to read those side by side.
Yeah, that would be cool. Bloch was a contributor to pulp magazines such as Weird Tales, much like Lovecraft was. And he was also a prolific screenwriter, including writing 3 episodes for the original Star Trek in the 1960s.
Which we've just had 2 cool Star Trek events happen. March 22nd, William Shatner turned 95. And on April 5th was First Contact Day.
Supposedly he just did those 3...
I looked them up, and they are good episodes. They're just random ones that, don't necessarily... They're not like the top 5 episodes, but I actually didn't know that, and I think it's really cool, and I want to watch those.
Supposedly 1 or 2 of them he mentions the old ones, which they then make a planet for and a whole story about, but the old ones is very specifically the name that Lovecraft used to describe his Cthulhu mythos monsters. So it's cool. He ended up making up a Star Trek race that was based on Cthulhu stuff. So that's cool.
Nice. Love it.
Bloch was also the recipient of the Hugo Award, the Bram Stoker Award 5 times, including a Lifetime Achievement, the World Fantasy Award, and Psycho won the Edgar Allan Poe Award from the Mystery Writers of America. He also served a term as the president of the Mystery Writers of America. So this dude wrote and never stopped writing.
Cool. Good.
Passed away in 94, so I was going to say that's not long ago, but that's 30, almost 30 years ago now. More than 30 years ago. Damn.
That's like how 10 years ago is like 2004 for me, no matter what year it is.
Yeah, right. I hadn't heard of Robert Bloch before.
I mean, I
That's
had
cool.
Because of Hitchcock.
He has
I had not read this novel before, and I only have known him because of this book
because of
that Hitchcock turned into a film. Yeah.
I'm sad. I checked our library. Some of Bloch's earlier stories were heavily influenced by the Cthulhu mythos, and he has a collection called Mysteries of the Worm, and I'm like, damn, I got to read that. But our library doesn't have it, and it's $50 online, so I don't know if I needed that bad.
Oh, is it like a collector's thing?
Maybe it's out of print or something. I don't know. Supposedly it's cool though.
Got to go scour all our used bookshops.
Wait, we have to go to more bookstores?
Oh no.
Put it in season 3. So there's Robert Bloch. Tell us about this little known story, Psycho, we're about to talk about.
Mary Crane is on the run after stealing $40,000 in cash from her employer. Now, keep in mind that $40,000 in 1960 equals about $500,000 in today's cash.
Damn.
Inflation is insane, people. It's insane. But also, just to give you, 40,000 doesn't seem like a whole lot in comparison these days, but it is in this point. Driving late into the night in the pouring rain, Mary decides to stop for the night at the Bates Motel, run by middle-aged bachelor Norman Bates, who lives with his mother in their house behind the motel. Or does he?
Dun, dun, dun. I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder if any of you guys don't know, like, the twist of Psycho. That'd be crazy. It seems like you're born in here and, like, you just know it.
I think people definitely know, like, the infamous shower scene. Like, that's a given.
I guess that's the first thing you
But I
know.
don't think people necessarily know when that happens.
Interesting.
Did you? Because when you were reading it, you're like, oh, wait, what?
Yeah, the shower scene happens pretty early on. So I thought that she is a main character, but I thought she would be alive as a main character for a longer portion of the story. So even though I knew about the shower scene, I knew about the twist with him and his mother, there was a lot here that was new for me. So that was cool. It wasn't like everything had been spoiled for me, just the important parts.
So our lovely Norman Bates is 40 years old.
Ah, ouch. That's scary.
Yeah, I know. Speaking of...
That means he's younger than me.
10 years ago.
And there's a big difference between the Norman Bates in the book and in the movie. And when we talk about the movie, we're talking about the Hitchcock movie, not the Gus Van Sant remake.
Yeah.
Which I just found out starred Vince Vaughn as Norman Bates, which seems very odd.
Speaking of Norman Bates in the film, one of the reasons I wanted to do the month of Psycho, I wanted to do it anyway, but one of my excuses was that April 4th was Anthony Perkins' birthday, too.
He was so good in that movie.
Yeah.
He gave me huge Hayden Christensen vibes. Did you get that at all?
Mm-hmm.
Mostly the way he looked, but also some of his mannerisms. I was like, Hayden Christensen should have been in the remake.
I also got good Mia Goth vibes because he seems so friendly, and then when he gets crazy eyes, he's really good at it.
Oh yeah, watching this and reading this made me want to watch the I don't know, what is the Pearl trilogy called? Does it have a name? But in Maxine, she goes into the Bates house, I believe.
Yeah, and we actually got our child to watch it with us.
Not Maxine.
No,
but
sorry,
Psycho.
And I was really excited to tell him because we might go to Universal Studios this summer, and I told him he might see the actual Bates house, and I think it's just the house. I don't think you see the motel. I'm not sure if both are part of the tour, but I guess we'll find out. We'll let you know.
Luckily, he was sitting next to you because the whole time it's like, what's going to happen? What's she doing? What's happening? What's going on?
He was definitely dissecting the film. It was really cute.
As it was going on, to which you replied, watch the movie.
I think my favorite question was, Mommy, are there people like this in real life? And I was like, oh, I didn't anticipate that.
I thought he specifically asked if people murder others.
If there are people like Norman Bates who kill people.
You just looked at me.
And I was like, so this is a movie. I totally gaslit him on that. I did not answer that question. He's a little too young, I think, to worry about real life murders.
Honestly, there was more violence in I, Claudius, which he watched with us. So this was pretty tame by our standards today.
The psychological part, though, is where I was like, oops. Anyway, he's
let's
fine.
start with the book. We'll talk a little bit.
On.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more
our bad parenting.
Hey, we just read something about how you can tell if your child is gifted if they interact with movies or books or games that are typically reserved for older children or adults. So that means our son is a genius because he watched Psycho.
Or he's psychotic because he
a little of both.
Psycho.
Aren't gifted people usually a little psychotic? All right. Let's talk about the book. So this Norman Bates in the book is like a heavy-set, flat-faced, kind of like average.
He wears glasses.
Nothing kind of guy. I guess the one in the movie's average too, but they've supposedly like tried to pick someone who was more conventionally attractive in order to get audiences to
Well, yeah, it's Hollywood.
empathize more, right? It's a small thing, but it's also a complete different look for the character. But psychologically, a lot is similar. What's really cool is right away knowing what the twist is at the end. It's fun to read the beginning because it opens from Norman Bates' perspective, and it's cool to look for all those little hints of all this happening inside of his head, which there are some hints there.
And interesting thing that I read about the character was that Bloch loosely based him on. It's funny because the wiki says 2 people and then lists more than one person, but one of the people was Ed Gein. Who,
I think it's Ed Gein. I looked it up.
Oh, well, I guess. I mean, he's from Wisconsin. You'd think they'd pronounce it German. Whatever.
Who supposedly also had an overbearing mother.
Oh, okay. And did fun things to corpses.
Yeah, there was a show that came out about
taxidermy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, he wore his victim's skin.
Oh, so he's also
crazy?
Well,
oh, like Hannibal Lecter?
No, not Hannibal Lecter, but I forgot the guy's name, but who Hannibal Lecter helps find. It puts the lotion in the basket. Like,
oh, that's right. That wasn't Hannibal Lecter doing the skinning.
No, Hannibal Lecter does the eating.
Yeah.
That'd be another really fun one. We should do a month of cannibals. I love cannibalism.
Ooh, I want to read,
such a fun topic.
There's some Jack Ketchum cannibal books that I've heard are grotesque.
Well, there's a fucking Shakespeare, dude. We can do Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah, Titus Andronicus. But this isn't a Shakespeare podcast.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting that he based it on one of his inspirations was a real murderer
who lived nearby, I believe. I think Fairview is
Wisconsin,
is a made up like where they are in Psycho is a made up town or whatever. But it was close. It was nearby where Ed Gein had
Plainsfield
done his murdering.
Skansen. So our main character in the beginning, Mary, is fleeing from San Antonio, or it was Dallas. I can't remember. She's coming from, I believe it's San Antonio, and her sister went to Dallas for the weekend, or it's the other way around. So she's heading up north to escape her. Yeah,
let's talk about how she gets her hands on this money.
I love this part. I think that Bloch did a really good job of making her a normal, nice woman who's not out to steal, but the situation that she's put in and the way that the people that she works for are just kind of douchebags and are flippant with money and taking advantage of people just pushed her over the edge.
Yeah, she works at a real estate firm, and this guy's closing out a deal on a house and brings in $40,000 cash, and her boss asks her to take the money to the bank to deposit. And the guy who pays the money is also like much older than her, but asks her to, I think, go to Vegas with him for the weekend and heavily implies like, hey, I got money and give me your body.
I'll pay you.
So it's just like
prostitution, basically.
Yeah, it's like a gross character who brings out an obscene amount of money with cash, which also ties into the fact that she wants to get married to her love, Sam Loomis, who she met on a cruise, I think, right? Or like a riverboat cruise or something?
Yeah, her sister convinced her to go on a cruise. It was just a short thing because she's like, you really need a vacation.
Because she had been taking care of their mother, which is interesting.
Yeah, and it's another indicator, too, that Mary's under a lot of stress. And, you know, her sister's like, you need to go take a break.
Yeah, and Sam Loomis, her love interest, is running a hardware store, which he inherited from his father, but is also heavily in debt. So he's like living in the back room in a small town and doesn't want to get married until he's paid off that debt so that they can get a house together.
He's a very responsible person. It's funny because you're like, my first thought was, well, what are you doing on a cruise then? Like, you're not responsible. But he won that at like a county fair thing and couldn't get cash for it. It was like, you have to do this. So he's like, all right, well, I guess I'll go on this cruise. So it's not like he's throwing away money on holidays instead of fulfilling his debt duties. So she thinks, oh, well, if I take this money to him, we can pay off the debt, get married, and I'll just change my name and I can disappear and start life afresh.
I mean, I was going to say she's clever in some ways. This whole thing is like pretty preposterous, right? Because she's trying to convince herself that like it'll be fine. She'll show up with the money and she'll say she inherited it. And she even thinks like he's going to question that, but it'll be fine. It's going to be okay. That like we'll use this money to pay off his debt so then we can get married earlier. So she ends up trading in her car at quite a big loss for another car, and then drives further on and then exchanges the car again. So just trying to like
cover her tracks.
Her tracks. And in the movie, it was cool because she has a police officer who follows after her and talks to her and is like pretty suspicious about her behavior. But that doesn't happen in the book. In the book, she just makes the changes and then,
I think it's just a quicker way to show her anxiety spiking because she's
for the movie.
Yeah, she's got that, and even in the film, it goes through. She thinks about what everyone's saying, but they do that really well in the book and show how she's determined, but yet also trying to plot this out because it's very last minute. There was no plan. It's not like she planned this out. She just had this money put down in front of her, and she's like, "Fuck this, I'm out." And so, she doesn't even really think it through. So on her drive up north, she's working through how is this even going to work,
When we watched a little bit of behind the scenes that was on the movie disc that we just watched, and it was pretty interesting because while she's in the car driving, there's the narration of her thinking, if she's going to be able to get away with this and thinking about how her boss and the guy who brought the money in are creeps and all that. And supposedly Hitchcock was out of frame, but sitting there with her and narrating what her inner thoughts would be in the scene so that she could make the right kind of facial expressions.
At the right points, very clever. Oh, he's such a good film.
Yeah, really cool.
Director. So she heads up north and it starts raining so badly and it's very late and she's incredibly tired because she's been driving nonstop for, I think it was maybe not 48 hours.
Wasn't it 18 hours? That
it
was in my mind.
It was a long time, longer than you should drive.
Especially me. I would have fallen asleep a long time ago.
Oh, 18 hours, yeah. So the thing with the Bates Motel is that it's there. It's the old highway, but then they built a new highway, and so no one really shows up to this motel anymore. But Mary takes the wrong turn. She does not go on the main highway. She ends up on the old highway. She's really tired. She also thinks about the fact that if she's going to see Sam and tell him that she got this inheritance, she should probably not look like a crazy person who just ran away. So she's like, well, I'll stop here. I'll sleep. I'll clean myself up and then go there in the morning fresh and, have processed her thoughts more too.
Which is crazy to think about the inflation, right? Because she's going to show up with $40,000. So if someone showed up today and was like, I got $500,000, I guess if you did that, I wouldn't ask questions.
She didn't. She actually planned that out pretty well though. Cause she said she was going to tell him about a portion of it and then like figure out how to parse out more over time or do something, put it aside in a different way. So she wasn't going to go in there and be like, here's $40,000. I think she was like maybe 10 or he owed 8 or something like that.
But yeah, she shows up to this motel and at first there's a no vacancy or no, there's not a no vacancy sign on. There's just no sign on at all because, they're not on the main highway anymore and Bates doesn't really expect anybody to come, especially on a night like this where it's pouring rain and it's getting late. He's like in the house and not even running the place yet until he notices that her car comes in. Yeah,
it's cool. They mentioned that she runs over this like announcement system. So I think there's like some kind of metal bar that rings a bell.
That's right. Yeah, she runs over like a wire that rings a bell in the house.
Yeah, so then he knows to come down. But he's sitting and reading a book about the Incas and how they would turn corpses into drums. And this is a real book that he was
Oh, cool.
reading.
You looked it up?
No, but it said it had a footnote in my copy that said it was
that he got permission from the author.
Because he quotes a portion of it. And it's called The Realm of the Incas by Victor W. von Hagen. And he talks about how they would stretch people's stomachs and turn them into a drum that would make sound out of their mouth. So pretty gory right off the bat. You're like, oh, okay, this guy's got interesting taste in books.
And this is specifically in the book too. He has a bookshelf they talk about where he has some different occult books and like supernatural kind of things. And none of that's in the movie. So that adds a little extra layer for the book.
Yeah, and it switches back and forth between his perspective and then Mary's perspective. So he's sitting and reading this book and having a conversation with his mom, or more like she's berating him for reading these nasty books and staying at home and still not moving out. And even though he's a grown man, but he's not much of a man, so she's going on, and he's just like, leave me alone, mother. And then Mary shows up and he's like, okay, good, I can go,
It was really interesting. They had this part about when it's Norman's perspective, when he's thinking about these books that he's reading, because he also has like books on psychology and all these things. And he's very much presented as like a boy man. But he says when he's reading, his thoughts make him feel like an adult. So this is like his little escape into his version of what he thinks is an adult, probably in terms of, more complex thinking. I thought that was a interesting little addition.
Because he grew up in this house. He's never left home. He's always been here. So he has a very small picture of what the world is, and what he does know, he's mostly read in books. And based on this one book, he has a unique taste in literature. And so therefore you're going to get a unique view of the world.
So she shows up and, the little bell or buzzer goes off in the house, and the mom's like, go down to the hotel. And like, the sign is off. You're not even ready. The lights are off. What the hell's wrong with you? So he goes down there and meets her, and she signs in with a different name, which is also different in the book. Or different between the book and the movie. In the movie, she just signs in with her.
No, she does a different name, but her name is not Mary in the movie.
You want to know why? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So in the movie, she's Marion Crane from Phoenix, Arizona, and the reason they did that is they found out there was a Mary Crane from Phoenix, Arizona, like a real person. So they were like, yeah, we'll just change it.
But she was. Wait, what?
In the movie, she's Marion Crane.
Yeah.
Because there was an actual Mary Crane from Phoenix. So they didn't want to use a real person's name.
Oh, because they were filming it because in the book, she's not from Phoenix.
Yeah, in the movie she is, for whatever reason. Maybe that's where they could film.
That's pretty thoughtful. I mean, some random person named Mary. Like, who cares? It's a movie. I don't know.
Well, it's a shocking movie. All right, we'll get into that. I got more movie tidbits, but let's save that. Let's get back to the book. She's hungry, and Bates tells her there's a diner like 10 miles up the road, but it's just crap and rain, and it's a horrible night, so she doesn't want to go back out. And he invites her to the house to come eat a meal with him, which is weird because he doesn't eat much. He like makes food and then watches her eat while he talks about his taxidermy hobby.
Yeah, but I mean, he could have already eaten. I mean, the timing,
but he specifically says, I was just about to eat dinner.
Yeah,
so it's a little creepy.
It's totally creepy, but, it's also polite. Like, we're also looking at it from our perspective in our time period. It would, like, I would not... I would have a hard enough time going to a motel in the middle of nowhere by myself as a woman as it is, much less go up to their house and eat if it was like a man alone, right? But that's also, this is 2026. We're talking 1950s. Times are very, very different. people were much more open to these kind of scenarios because the world wasn't as scary. I don't know. Anyway, so she goes up, they talk, and then they start talking about his relationship with his mom. She says, well, maybe she would be better off being taken care of elsewhere. And he freaks out at her. She apologizes and she's like, well, I guess it's time for me to go.
Yeah, it gets like a shrill, high-pitched voice.
Yeah. And
it just like snaps for a second.
So she goes back and goes to shower and get ready for bed and stuff. And he put her in room 12 or whatever.
I think it was 6.
6. The room right next to the office, which he has a little sneaky peek hole where he can watch her. So he does. And then, of course, he starts thinking like, oh, she's disgusting because he can't, accept the fact that him watching her is what's gross. Oh, and not the fact that she's bathing.
But also before she gets ready in the shower, she's thinking about Sam and does a very modern thing. It describes how she does like a bump and grind motion.
Oh yeah, she does her little dance.
Because she's like picturing her upcoming time with her man. And so he sees this and of course thinks that she's taunting him as if she knows she's being watched. Yeah.
So he's drinking because he can't drink up at the house because his mother disapproves. So
and this is also different from the movie. In the movie, he does not drink. That's something else they changed.
Yeah, he goes back up to the house. But so he's in his office drinking. He passes out and then wakes up and finds her dead and mother is gone. She's gone from the house. He goes and looks for her because he's like, oh my God, mother killed her. And
this is like, I don't know, the 5th of the way through the book. Yeah, so I was surprised. I thought she would die later.
Yeah. So he cleans up the murder scene and is like, okay, well, hopefully no one finds out and takes mother away. But before he kills her, though, when they're having the conversation, one of the most iconic lines, which they actually do have in the film as well, he says, I think perhaps all of us go a little crazy at times. And when he says that, it really makes Mary think. And she actually decides too that she might just turn around and go back to San Antonio, return the money and not return it, but turn it into the bank and just act like nothing happened. Because she's like, yeah, I think I lost it, And I loved that because
that was cool. Yeah.
It was just cool to see like, oh yes, a normal person can lose their mind in a moment of passion.
Yeah, and she had left with the money on a Friday, so her thought is even though she just did this 18-hour drive, she could get back in time to deposit the money Monday morning before she gets to work.
But she can't because,
Let's. I'm gonna read the shower murder part since you can't see it right now. So. Tell me if this is as iconic. The roar of the shower was deafening, and the room was beginning to steam up. That's why she didn't hear the door open or note the sound of footsteps. And at first, when the shower curtains parted, the steam obscured the face. Then she did see it there, just a face, peering through the curtains, hanging in midair like a mask. A headscarf concealed the hair, and the glassy eyes stared inhumanly. But it wasn't a mask. It couldn't be. The skin had been powdered dead white and 2 hectic spots of rouge centered on the cheekbones. It wasn't a mask. It was the face of a crazy old woman. Mary started to scream, and then the curtains parted further, and a hand appeared, holding a butcher's knife. It was the knife that, a moment later, cut off her scream and her head.
Yeah, I love that she's decapitated.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is something else.
What does he do with her?
So Norman then wakes up and I think he goes to spy on her again and sees, or hears the water or something and goes in and finds her body and is like, oh shit, mother's been here. So he goes up, looks for his mom. She's missing. And then he wraps her up and puts her in the trunk of her car and grabs all her stuff, puts it all in the trunk of the car. He searches, finds one of her earrings, and is like, oh, thank goodness I found this, Can't find the other one, but he's like, oh, it's probably just stuck to her. But she's all wrapped up, so he can't look at her corpse. And then he drives her car behind the house. There's a swampy area, and he drives and pushes the car into the swamp and watches the car sink. Now, meanwhile, that $40,000 is in the glove box.
Yeah, oops.
And had he searched the car, I don't think it would have mattered, though. I don't see him taking that money and like running away and starting a new life. You know, I think there would have been no difference in how this story played out had he found that. But it's an interesting thing to think about.
I just think putting a car in the swamp would make me really nervous because, I mean, there's got to be a lot of shallow parts of a swamp. So he's really like taking it for granted that it's going to sink, which it does.
And he's worried at one point it like stops, and it happens in the film too, but it like stops and he's like, and then it like slowly continues down. And then there's like this big like sound as it like goes all the way under. It is, I guess, in a sense for him, lucky that happened, but but then he just tries to pretend nothing happened and goes back to normal. And then I think that night too, his mother comes back.
Yeah, he thinks that he's going to have to like go around and find her like she's just wandered off or something. As you know, where he is, mother tends to follow closely behind.
Yes.
Or within. And then the story shifts, right? And this is cool. I always like it when you get like a sudden shift in the trajectory of the story. And I thought Bloch did such a good job building up Mary as a main character. I feel like I've definitely read books where a character who dies gets just enough backstory so that you can empathize with them, but I'm like the way he builds her up, she's got super main character energy and then just she's gone. So that was really cool.
Yeah, well, you wonder, is she going to continue on? Is she going to run away with this money, or is she going to go back and return it to the bank? She's got options. And it's an interesting thought to think about, like, which one is she going to do? Where's this story going to go? And then none of those things happen.
So she's dead. That scene's over. And we go to the hardware store where Sam is working. And they've been writing each other letters, but he hasn't heard from her in a while now. And he's kind of wondering, like, where is she? What's going on? And then it's really like, I feel bad for her sister. So Mary's sister, Leela, ends up coming out to the hardware store because she hasn't seen her sister in a week after some time has passed. And Sam opens the door and it's nighttime and he sees Leela and mistakes her for Mary. So he just like leans in and starts making out with her. Oh
yeah. And she's like, oh, gross, get off me.
And then he steps back and looks a little closer and he's like, oh wait, you're not Mary.
Her character too, I didn't get this with Mary, but I did with Leela. Some of the sexist ideas of either Bloch or the time, I think mostly a combination of, show up with her character and just the damsel in distress vibe that she gives off. Because like at one point, they're trying to figure out what to do in finding Mary. We get this lovely line. Sam glanced at Leela. What do you think? He asked. I don't know. I'm so worried now. I can't think, she sighed. Sam, you decide. Like, come on.
Yeah, she's a little shrill and meek.
Yeah.
She gets frustrated a lot because she feels like Sam and then Mr. Arbogast, who's a private detective who ends up coming in like right after she goes to the hardware store, he shows up. But they're always like telling her to wait while they go investigate things. And she just wants to go to the police. But she kind of meekly is like, well, they're making me wait. I'm so mad at these men.
I'll do what the men tell me to. It's like, oh, come on, girl. Your sister showed some oomph, like apparently it didn't rub off on you, but
yeah.
So I like Leela's fine. I really liked Mary's character more as far as the women in this are concerned.
Yeah, and then there's like subtly, I don't know, you tell me if you think it was subtle or not, but throughout the rest of this book, there is kind of a budding implied relationship between Sam and Leela.
Yes.
As if he's just like, well, I'll take your sister.
Yeah, I definitely.
It doesn't become explicit. Thankfully, that would have been too much.
Yeah, but I mean, they look alike until they don't. I don't know. Yeah, it's weird.
But then it turns into kind of a detective story. I mean,
It reminds me of High and Low, the Kurosawa film, because you know how in that there's like the kidnapping, and then the second half becomes like a thriller, completely different story within one film, and this does the same. I feel is the same concept, where at first it's her running away. And it's a thriller, right? Of her, like, what is she going to do? What kind of decisions is she going to make? And then it becomes an investigation of, well, where's Mary?
Yeah, and it's interesting because as the reader, we know what happened to her. We know that she was murdered at the motel. And so I think it's kind of cool when there's a mystery for the characters, but the reader has that extra information, so that makes it more not about who did it, but how are they going to find out who did it.
I think he did a good job of making it believable of how they find the Bates Motel. So Arbogast, the detective, is just going around to everywhere until he stumbles on the Bates Motel, looks at the register, and has a copy of her handwriting, which he's able to compare and figures out it's her. Questions Norman, who says, oh, no one was here. And then eventually it's like, oh, well, there was a woman. Oh, I guess it was her, but she left.
Yeah, it's interesting. Norman stumbles with their first meeting and has the whole like, nobody showed up. Actually, oh, that's right. Now I remember someone did show up. I forgot. The scenes after that are with him or him thinking like, get your story straight. She came in and left. And then eventually the private investigator goes missing. And so he's like, okay, she left, went to Chicago, and told the private investigator that, and then he left. And that's all I'm going to tell anybody. Get your story straight.
Yeah. And so what happens with Arbogast is he calls Sam because Sam's like, if you're not back by this certain time, we're going to call the sheriff because Leela insists on it. So he calls and says, hey, I'm going to be back soon, but I'm going to go talk to Bates's mother in the house before I come back because Bates won't let him. He's like, no, she's sick. She can't come out and talk. And then he goes up to the door and then opens the door, and Mother found the razor because she like slashes his throat.
And I think that was different than in the movie. It's the butcher knife again, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah. So he's like laying in the entry hall, and then people show up to stay in the hotel. So Norman's like, oh shit, I gotta go down. So he like just leaves Arbogast in the entryway,
wrapped in the rug,
goes down and like helps these random people check in. And it's kind of funny because at one point he like talks about how there are like 3 or 4 guests per day who are showing up or something like that. And I was like, I thought no one ever comes here, and now all of a sudden there's like a bunch of guests. It's convenient.
Yeah, now that he's murdering people.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's like, oh shit.
Supposedly the sequel, I think there's a difference between the sequel movies and the sequel books, but one of them has the plot line of the motel is reopened again because tourists are interested in staying there.
Oh, spooky.
Yeah, there were like at least 2 book sequels, and movie and show sequels are still going on.
Well, so I read too that the second film has absolutely nothing to do with the second novel because Bloch actually submitted screenplays for it and the studio shot it down. And so he ended up writing the sequel because it was his story that he wanted to tell.
I wonder if he got double payment then for like his books, and then if the movies.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I mean, God, they were awful.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, this is ours now.
They would do that with
know if
people.
Hitchcock
Like
did
Shirley Temple was basically forced labor. Hmm?
Do you know if Hitchcock directed any of the sequels?
I don't think so. I
Yeah.
think he just did the original.
Yeah. But they're doing their investigation into, where Mary is, and they end up getting interest at the Bates Motel, and then the private investigator goes missing, and so they end up going and talking to the sheriff of the town, who also says, like Norman Bates is a weird recluse, but he wouldn't hurt a fly, right? And likely what happened is the private investigator found the $40,000 cash, or is going after Mary to take it and keep for himself and then disappear. He's like, that's the simplest explanation. And part of the reason that everyone's dragging their feet is because it's such a small town, so they're reticent to make any kind of big accusations, right? Because everybody knows each other, and you start making heat, and then you're gonna get singled out for, I don't know, investigating a crime, but still,
Yeah, I don't know.
And that frustrates Leela a lot because she's from a bigger city, so she's like, oh, these guys are just like small town, cautious, conservative, don't want to make any big sudden moves, and my sister's been missing for weeks now, and like, what's going on? But of course she doesn't take agency. She's still waiting for the men to step in for her.
But eventually they do go to the sheriff, right?
And she shows more agency as this picks up too.
Yeah, because Arbogast doesn't come back. So then then Sam finally agrees to go to the sheriff. And the sheriff's like, well, yeah, okay. He said that the weird part about it, so I guess the Bates Motel is close enough. It's in the county that they're coming from, where Sam lives, because he's like, I know the Bates family, and I don't believe that your private investigator is telling you the truth, because Mrs. Bates, died years ago.
20 years ago, I think it might have been. Maybe 10.
So then the mystery shifts of, well, wait, if she's dead, is she really dead? I think that Bloch does a really good job of giving you the twists and red herrings and such to keep you guessing as long as you don't already know.
Yeah, but even knowing like the ultimate outcome, I still really enjoyed it. I thought it was done really well.
Yeah.
So they get to a point where they go to the motel and they act as a married couple who want a room, and they're like, we want the room where Mary was staying, the room number 6, which I think is room number 1 in the movie. But anyway, they go in there searching for anything that they can, any kind of evidence that something, there was foul play. And looking in the shower, Leela ends up finding the other earring behind
the tub, because I'm guessing it's like a clawfoot tub.
Yeah, and they find the other earring, and they were, I think, like one of a kind. Like her sister bought them.
Leela bought them for her.
And there's some dried blood around it. And even then, Sam's like, maybe she just hit her head. And finally, Leela's like, no, there's something going on here. So Sam's like, all right, I'll go back and talk to the sheriff. You stay put. And she doesn't stay put. Good for you, Leela. She ends up going directly to the house.
And so Sam goes into the office and is drinking with Norman. And
that's right.
And then at one point, Norman's like, well, I know your lady didn't leave. I saw her walk up to the house. So she just parked up the street and then went to the house.
I liked the scene too, because
so cool.
This is like at the moment where even though Sam is still being reticent about things, it's like, I found an earring and dried blood. And it's like Sam's job is to go there and just keep Norman busy. But at this point, Norman is openly drinking. He's got the whiskey bottle on the counter, and he's like, I don't usually drink, but it's late. And he ends up offering some whiskey to Sam, and Sam's like, I don't know, Norman, it's kind of an important time. I probably shouldn't drink, but he still accepts it. And then Norman offers him like another
They just
drink.
keep drinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like, probably shouldn't be doing this. But ends up just getting drunk.
Yeah. And I love this scene because they're both playing each other for the fool, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sam thinks he's playing Norman, and really Norman's playing him. And
I feel like
love that.
I empathize. I don't empathize, but I could see being Sam in this situation, because he's also thinking through all the different possibilities of what's going on in his head, and then while he's thinking that and accepting these drinks, he's like, talk to Norman, get information. So he's just like not talking to him, accepting too many drinks. These are things that I would probably do.
Well, and he's also like questioning his relationship with Mary, because they barely know each other. You know, they live far, they live at least 20 hours away from each other, and they write letters, but they met on a cruise, and then it's like, okay, we'll get married in 2 years or something. So it's an interesting relationship to begin with. And then to have him be like, well, she stole money, and was she actually coming to me? And do I really know this person? So he's having this internal
Turmoil?
He's having this internal conflict with himself of like, what am I even doing in this situation, right? I don't know. It's maybe he doesn't, in some sense, want to know what happened, right? Because then he might have to accept the fact that this person who he was so ready to marry is actually a
psycho
pariah, yeah, or a thief.
He doesn't think she's psychotic. I just wanted to say the name of the book.
I mean, it would fit.
I thought that was cool too, especially because it seems one of those things where if you didn't know who the murderer was, it would be casting doubt on Mary to make the reader think like, oh, maybe things are more complicated than they seem. But it still adds, even though you know, it still adds additional layers to Mary's character, which I liked.
Yeah. And there's layers to Norman's character. Leela's kind of flat. Abergast, there's one point when they start to question whether or not he just lied about Norman's mother and then followed Mary to Chicago was where they assume she went. So it's like, ooh, was he playing them? There's a lot of where is everyone playing everybody else except for Leela and Sam. They're kind of stuck in the middle of this swirling, questionable situation where everybody's got their own agendas.
This is let's see, Victorian Psycho, which we talked about last episode. Check that one out. That was also a pretty quick book. It was under 200 pages. This is about 170 pages. And for a quick read, I thought it had a pretty good complexity for the characters, for the room he had to build up those relationships.
Well, and the characters I think that needed the most attention got the most attention. Leela and Sam didn't really need a whole lot. They kind of just needed to be the push to solve the mystery of what happened to Mary, and they are detrimental in the end, but their character doesn't come up into question. So there doesn't need to be a lot of emphasis put on making sure that they are who they say they are. So,
and another cool character I want to bring up is the house, really. I mean, Bloch puts a lot of emphasis in describing the house, and especially toward the end when Leela goes to the house and is just like, screw this, I'm going in there and talking to the mother. Bloch gives a lot of detail of how the house is like very old-fashioned. It looks like it's been decorated 2 generations ago or whatever.
Yeah, it's stuck in the 19th century, I think is one of the ways he puts it.
Yeah, and she's looking around in the different rooms in the kitchen and goes upstairs and looks in the bedrooms, and then finally ends up in the bedroom where mother lives, and she's very tidy and clean, and it's really cool because it almost looked like it's furniture, and the way it's put together is older than the rest of the house, but it's also clean and obviously being taken care of and lived in, that it like sends shivers down her spine because it's incongruous with the rest of the house.
Yeah.
But that's not where mother is, because mother has gone down to the fruit cellar.
Not by choice. Norman has moved her so no one would find her, so that she couldn't get in trouble for murdering people, is how he puts it. And I really like his relationship with his mother, because from the very beginning, you can tell it's contentious. He's very unhappy with her, but clearly he's still there. So he feels this obligation to take care of her. He has nowhere else to go, in a sense. And this is his life. And even though she drives him crazy, this is what he has to do. And even in the very beginning, she's egging him on basically to kill her, you know? She's like, oh, I wish you wish you could kill me, or you must hate me so much, you know? So it's really an interesting conversation that he has with her early on. And it just shows how awful it is. And even at one point, he mentions Norman brings up the Oedipus situation, is how he puts it. So he knows that he has this really weird relationship with his mom.
That's got to be weird. Hey, Mom, there's this story where a character sleeps with his mom.
Yeah, so right?
I thought you'd just like to know that.
Or I can tell you about this drum I'm reading about.
Yeah.
Like, what?
And it's interesting, too, because we have, like we mentioned toward the beginning of the story, and it comes up, I think, a couple more times, even in his own thoughts about, like, if Mom was to go into an institution, and he's so vehemently against that, because if she goes to an institution, he's going to, which is the unsaid aspect of that.
Yeah, and also she calls him boy, and it drives him nuts, like, a boy, you know, she belittles him. And at one point, though, he brings up a good point about his relationship with his mother. And he says about leaving home, and she's like, you'd never have the gumption. And he's like, you wouldn't let me. And she's like, no, you wouldn't, because you're not even half a man. You couldn't even find your own way. So she's really mean to him. And so he thinks to himself, he wanted to shout out at her that she was wrong, but he couldn't, because the things she was saying were the things he had told himself over and over again, all through the years. It was true. She'd always laid down the law to him, but that didn't mean he always had to obey. Mothers sometimes are overly possessive, but not all children allow themselves to be possessed. And I think that's such an interesting take that he has, because he has let himself be possessed by his mother. He just had a conversation with her about how he doesn't have the gumption to leave, and he could just up and walk away, but instead he stays and lives in this miserable situation that he's kept himself in.
I think in the book, I know in the movie, when Mary's having dinner with him in the house, that she's like, why don't you... Oh, no, yeah, this is in the book and the movie. She's like, why don't you go? Why don't you live your life? And it's just in his mind.
I have to take care of Mother.
Yeah, it's not at all possible.
And it makes sense.
So, end of the book, we get Leela looking in the house for Mom. Finally goes down into the fruit cellar, and it's cool because at first she goes just into the basement and doesn't see anything and is like, where is this woman? What's going on? But behind an Indian rug that's hanging on the wall, there's a door, and she like pulls on the rug and it just disintegrates, falls apart, and reveals another room. And then she goes in. Which
is impressive how it was able to be hung in the first place without disintegrating, right? But you know, details.
Yeah. Goes in the fruit cellar and discovers Mother, but Mother is taxidermy.
Yes, it's so good.
This scene in the movie was cool. I liked it.
Yeah, she just spins around. It's like, oh my God. And then while she's down there, this is after Norman had hit Sam over the head with a whiskey bottle and went to go take care of her. So he comes down the stairs holding a knife in a dress and is about to kill Leela. It switches then back to Sam, who wakes up with the sheriff, and the sheriff is there, and he's like, well, I figured out that Arbogast didn't leave because his luggage was still at the hotel in town, and that doesn't make sense if he's chasing after Mary. So he puts two to two together, comes back, lo and behold, timing is perfect. Sam and the sheriff rush to the house and stop Norman from killing Leela just in time. And then they trudge up the car and they're able to get the money.
Both cars. He did the same thing with Arbogast's car, but also put that in the swamp.
Yeah,
really
so this
pushing
is
his
a
luck.
magical swamp, and just imagining Atreyu, the swamp of sadness. It's very important that we know they get the money back, so the rich people can continue being rich assholes. They put Norman in jail, and they try
Into
to
a psych ward or something.
yeah,
like that.
and so they have him talk to a doctor, which I think is very unnecessary, and I actually really think they did a good job with this in the film. But the doctor's like, well, Norman is a transvestite, and this has been happening for a long time, but he's also schizophrenic. And it's like, so what the hell does the transvestite have to do with anything? They just had to other him. And back in the 50s and 60s, and as we're seeing today, there's still a lot of people who have problems with transvestites and transsexuals and stuff, that this was just a way to other him and say, oh, well, he was already prone to dressing in women's clothing. So therefore, I don't know, it wasn't a far stretch for him to think he was his mother and dress up like a woman. I don't really...
Well, one of the things that we didn't mention
like that
too
point.
that's interesting is like at first the reader is told that his mother and her lover, 20 years ago or whenever it was, had commit suicide, or maybe they say murder suicide. I don't remember, but that they died and then Norman discovered them, and that's what made his brain crack. But then you find out later that he was just horribly jealous about this man that she was seeing, because she tells Norman that they're going to get married. And so then what he ends up doing is serving them coffee with brandy and strychnine. I think they say rat poison. So he actually ends up murdering them and then taxiderming his mother.
Oedipus.
Yeah. But yeah, the ending, I don't know. It just seemed like,
well,
we have to explain this.
But that part was completely unnecessary. The transvestite part was completely unnecessary, because then they go on to discuss how he's schizophrenic and he has 3 personalities. And there's Norman, who's the child, Norma, who is his mother, and then Normal, which is the adult version of Norman who takes care of the motel. The names are ridiculous.
Yeah.
But also kind of hilarious.
I think even when he comes down
explanation
to find Leela in the fruit cellar, doesn't he say something like, I'm Norma Bates? Somehow it comes out in a funny way.
Yeah, but it's an interesting change, right? Because you just talked about in Victorian Psycho how with modern storytelling, it often feels like the bad guy, quote unquote, is a good guy because of who they're killing and what they're doing, right? And in this instance, it's very clearly a mental health thing, right? He's schizophrenic and they other him with his transvestiteness, and he's just killing people because he has a problem with, for instance, Mary shaking her hips before going in the shower. And there's no, she was a bad, but then also in a sense though, right? She did steal money. So I guess, is that justification enough?
Yeah. Well, no, because she's a sympathetic character.
Right. So how do you feel looking at this through that lens, through that discussion from our previous read? Because this is purely a mental
feel like
health
this is a
conversation.
Yeah, this is, so much of this is based on the twist of Norman and his mother are the same person, right? Like that seems the main mystery and like focal point of everything going on in the book. So I don't know. I guess I don't know.
It's too different. It's too different. Yeah, because with this Psycho versus a Victorian Psycho, we're given a very clear reasoning, right? He's schizophrenic. He takes on his mother's personality when he murders people. He even says, "Oh, mother did it. It's mother." So my assumption then is that in his shifting of personalities, Norma, his mother, is the murderer, and Norman, the child, and then Normal are not. So there's that very clear distinction. This is what's making him the psycho. And then in Victorian Psycho, it seems like her personality, she just doesn't have, I know there's a term for it, I can't remember it, but she just has no
sociopath. I think that's different because she like doesn't have emotion. It's not that. Yeah, I don't know. Some sociopath or sociopath adjacent.
It's an interesting shift of what makes the psycho a psycho. And I think part of it too is the time period that it was written.
But you also mentioned how the movie handles it a little better, which was released a year after. And the doctor at the end does bring up the transvestite issue, but he's like, he specifically says right after that, he's like, you might think that he was a transvestite, but there are deeper issues here. There are deeper issues here than that.
Yeah, it's brought up, but it's like, well, that's beside the point. Like, yes, he is, but that's a different thing, which I was really appreciative when I was watching it. Because like, oh, good. Because reading the book, I was like, what the fuck? There's like, let's just throw this in there. I don't like that kind of stuff. So disparaging for the sake of being disparaging is kind of how that felt.
So you felt like it was just othering to make him less sympathetic?
Yeah, because, what's scarier than a man dressed up as a woman going into the women's bathroom, right? I mean, look at our societies freaking out about something stupid like that. And to bring that up in a way like this is to point out that obviously this is before the whole bathroom conversation, but using sexuality in that way to other someone and make them seem lesser in a sense is how I read it. It's not like, oh, he murdered everyone because he's a transvestite. It just was an unnecessary addition.
Let's talk a little bit more about the movie, if I may.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to.
I want to bring up, really just a couple of things. I was really interested about the fact that the movie was released, I think it was 1 year after the book was. And there's some cool things I found out about it. So somebody working for Hitchcock had read the book close to when it was coming out. Someone he was working for whose opinion he really trusted read the book and was like, you should make this into a movie. He agreed and then brought it to Paramount. They were like, nah, we're not doing this. This is like too over the top. There was no interest. And then so he offered to forego his usual $250K salary as director, and they're just like, we're just not interested in doing this. So he's like, okay, I will self-finance it and make it over at Universal instead of at Paramount, because apparently Paramount told him, oh, all of our studios and sound stages are booked, even though they weren't. There was supposedly a slump in the film industry at that point, but they just did not want to make this movie. They thought it would fail and be too violent. So he ended up self-financing it, and it cost it was like, what was it? It
was less than $1 million.
Yeah, it cost about $800,000 to make, and then made $50 million worldwide at the box office. And he had a 60% stake in it because that was part of him giving up his director's fee and self-financing it. And he also did it through his TV crew, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, instead of a movie
he used his TV crew, and he did it in black and white. In part, I think for financial reasons, but then also in part because it was supposedly going to be too gory to do in color.
Oh, that's right. And another really cool thing about it is apparently he sent out his assistant or some assistant, but he had actually gone out and gone to bookstores and bought up a whole bunch of copies of the book because he didn't want the twist to be ruined.
Nice.
And he also had a rule, which I guess was not normal for the time, where people could not go into the movie once it had started, that they had to be there from the beginning.
I mean, that makes sense for the shower scene and stuff, because if you come in after that and you're like, what the hell's going on? I think the way he found the book, at least in one of the behind the scene things we watched after the movie, his assistant was saying that he was flying to London and saw the book on the shelf and read it.
Oh, interesting. I read that an assistant brought it to him, but
or maybe had, and then he saw it again. It might have been, like a Bader Meinhof thing. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I love the detail of buying up copies of the book. Imagine just going to the bookstore and being like, I'll take 30 copies of Psycho, please.
Bloch is like, hell yeah.
Yeah, cha-ching.
Well, and it's a great film. It's one of my favorite Hitchcock films. I mean, I think it's a lot of people's favorite Hitchcock films, but his filmography is just so good, and the details and like what he zooms in on and how things shift, and how he also gives time for you to sit in these moments. And one of the people who were just talking in the behind the scenes stuff, the screenplay writer Joseph Stefano, was saying how they tried really hard to be within a certain length, and it had to be a very specific, it couldn't be longer than whatever standard they needed to be in. And they ended up having to cut a scene between Sam and Leela because it was the only thing in the whole film that they could really get rid of and feel like it still could hold the story together, because every scene was just so pivotal to the story. And I feel it's true.
Yeah, and to give some context too about how this was made with a much reduced budget. So Psycho was made with about $800,000, and the movie before, North by Northwest, had a $4.3 million budget. So he really
Which this is also a great film.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the typical trajectory that I would assume would be, as a director's budget gets bigger, they're not going to want to go backwards, right? They're just going to want to keep that budget or have it grow. So for him to be so confident about this story that he's like, you know what, if you guys don't want to do it, I'm going to self-finance it and get my TV crew to do it. And then it ends up being his most iconic film of all time.
Well, that's what happened with George Lucas with Star Wars. He self-financed that and almost went broke making it because it was not, the studios were like, what? No, we're not, And look at that. Look at Star Wars. It's, everyone knows that. So it's a cool thing to see when films are able to, when directors are willing to put it all on the line and come out with something great. And I think that pressure works to their advantage too, because you're not going to be lazy about it. Not to say Hitchcock is ever a lazy director. At least I love his films, and I've never really complained about any of them, but it's an interesting thing to ponder.
So in 1998, Gus Van Sant made a shot-for-shot remake. I don't know if every single shot was the same, but very similar, almost all the same dialogue in color, and obviously with different actors. Vince Vaughn as Norman Bates still sounds really weird to me. His thinking was he did it almost as an experiment, because he was curious if Psycho did really well because of the technicality of how it was made, or if it was the time that it was made in. And apparently the remake of it was just totally panned. It has like a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes, and because he did shot for shot, it apparently hurt the movie quite a bit, because then people could compare it to the original, and I guess the original just holds up stronger.
Of course it does. It's the original.
Yeah. I mean, we have that remake from a friend of ours has let us borrow it for an extended amount of time. So it would be interesting to check it out and see if he tried to do exactly the same, or if it's, 80% the same or what. But I can't imagine having a better performance than Anthony Perkins. He was just perfect in that role.
Yeah. Even Hitchcock, though, changed stuff within it, right? Like you mentioned, he took out the occultism. They also took out the alcoholism, or at least, I don't know if it's alcoholism, but him getting drunk and...
Well, it was kind of like he'd get drunk and that's when Mother would come out. So
yeah.
they took that away.
Which is kind of an interesting thing too. Like, would Mother be drunk then?
That'd be great.
Like,
that'd be a great skit.
Right? Like, Mother sloppy, get the knife out.
What I was surprised about in the original movie was how fake the murder in the iconic shower scene looked. Like, you see the knife coming down, but she never has any stab wounds, and it just kind of like the tip of the knife just like nudges her belly.
Yeah, bounces off her stomach.
And there's not much blood going down the sink. It's just like a little bit. So, compared to what we're used to today, it just was so tame. But at the time, of course, was
they didn't
more
decapitate
shocking.
her.
Yeah, there's no heads getting cut off here. They need to do a remake where they show her head get cut off and then Mother's just wasted whenever she comes out.
Oh my god.
All right, so what did you think of the book?
I really enjoyed it. It's fun as a Hitchcock fan to read the source material, you could say. I thought that Bloch did a really good job of giving Mother a personality and playing to that twist and playing to some red herrings. Had I not already known the twist, I could see where it would be, I don't know if shocking would be the right term, but I've read another book that had the same kind of concept where it's a mental health thing that really played well into it. And I really like that. I think that this works well for that. And I think that he did a good job maintaining that. My two biggest complaints are the unnecessary transvestite bullshit and Leela's
limp wrist kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Those two things I think could have been done without, but I guess if that's my biggest complaints, I don't know. Yeah, overall I really liked it. I thought that Mary and Norman had the best personalities and everyone else was fine. I liked that the sheriff was like, whatever, you just left, no big deal, missing person. And the societal viewpoint of the time of like, well, we don't really want to involve the police in this money matter. If we can just get it back, everything will be fine and we can just forget about it. Yeah. And the cop's like, okay. And nowadays it would be like, absolutely not.
Yeah, you waited a whole week to tell us? Like, you're complicit now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an interesting view of how times have changed. I did really enjoy it. I don't know if I like the movie or the book more. I guess you can't really, it's hard to say because it's visual versus internalized, but
in this case, yeah, I don't think there's a clear I liked one more than the other, which is usually not the case with books and movies, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that just shows how strong they each are on their own.
Yeah. What about you?
I also enjoyed it a lot. I liked what you said when you compared it to High and Low, the whole aspect of it seems like it's really going to be all about Mary. And then I was really surprised how early she died. And then it just shifts to a different kind of, I mean, it's the same story, but different characters and all that. I think that's really cool. And she was built up really well. I bet a lot of people were totally surprised when she was murdered. When this originally came out, I'd imagine. And I also really liked the prose. It was not in like a fancy way. This was one of those. So I love like delicious, meaty prose, but I also really like books like this where it's just kind of, I don't know, straightforward, simple prose, but nothing
is third person. That's why you like it.
It's third person past tense. I'm so old. Apparently,
it's clean.
Yeah, it's super clean. There's like very little, at least, detail that doesn't need to be there. Everything is there for a reason. And yeah, it's just clean, well told story, and I really enjoy that.
Which is funny how that matches with the film, right? And how they needed every little piece to put it together, at least in Hitchcock's mind, and that's a reflection of the book.
Yeah, just like really tightly paced and well done, and it's short. Again, it was like 170 pages, so it's an easy recommendation. You can get through this one pretty quickly, and it's cool to compare it to the movie and see where there's differences and similarities, and how Norman is portrayed differently between between those two things. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
Cool.
We had Victorian Psycho and then Psycho, and now we will be moving on to American Psycho next, which is a much longer book. I don't know, 350, 400 pages, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty long, I think. Yeah.
Have you been reading anything interesting?
Yeah, I'm listening to a book called Matrix by Lauren Groff. My mom recommended it to me. It's a historical fiction. The main character, Mary, becomes a prioress of a impoverished abbey, and it shows how her life is over the course of her life, basically. And this is during the time of Eleanor of Aquitaine, and she was part of that royal court and cast out and sent to this abbey to take over. It's a good book. It's absolutely not horror at all. And the prose is interesting. There's a lot of talking about themselves in third person. Like when they write letters, they'll say like, Amber misses you, like those kinds of things, which is a fun detail. And yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's fiction. It's fictionalized history. So, there's always liberties taken and fun little Easter eggs about history and such. Like at one point she's looking at this other woman and just like sees her face like decrepit and basically looking like a skeleton. And she thinks to herself, memento mori. And then she like blinks and the person looks normal again. So, they didn't really do that, especially Eleanor of Aquitaine's not really.
Is memento mori a Roman Empire thing, or is that Middle Ages?
No, it's Middle Ages.
Was that around the Black Death, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't really make sense for the time period because Eleanor of Aquitaine is like 13th century, 12th, 13th century. And memento mori is more, I think, 14th century. I mean, the concept was around. It was a Roman term, but it was more popularized, I think, much later. Once we started exploring, discovering the Americas and such, it had a lot more meaning then because it was like post-plagues, lots of horrible war, and this idea of living life to your fullest because life is short, but also the idea of exploration and discovering new things and living life to the fullest and seeing what's out there, before you die kind of thing. Just little things like that. It's fun to see the historical references pop in, even if they aren't totally accurate. It's fine. And I think this is I don't know if it's like a bestseller. I think my mom said it was on someone's like book club book thing, like Oprah's book or something like that. I don't know. Or Barack Obama's book. I don't know. I could be mixing that up with something else too. But yeah, it's a fun read. I'm enjoying it. And I have like, I don't know. I'm like 90% done with it. So I'm basically done. But that's it. That's all I've read. Besides Psycho, obviously. So what about you?
Nothing that I haven't already brought up, but this morning I finished 2 books. I've brought up this one, Medieval Europe by Chris Wickham.
Look at us in our medieval little...
Yeah, I pushed through that because I got like 2/3 of the way through this book, and it's very dense and academic and very interesting, but it's covering 1,000 years of history, so there's just a lot to cover. And I was starting to lose my momentum, but I was like, no, I don't want to DNF this book because it is really interesting. So I pushed through that this morning. It was really cool. Don't ask me to describe too much about it because it was really dense. So it was kind of like, I feel like when I would read a page, I'd forget the last page because it took all my concentration to follow what I was reading. But it was still really cool. Generally just like the move from scattered assembly politics and like different already I'm stumbling. It was just really interesting. But essentially where it ended, let's see, it goes up to 1500, but around like the 14th, 15th century, he starts talking about how people were much more literate and like participation and thoughts on the political process really started to come into being because for so long through the Middle Ages peasants and stuff had no idea what was even going on other than what the lord they worked for wanted them to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, the church would speak in Latin and most people didn't even speak it. So they had to interpret the Bible. They were completely in the dark.
Yeah. It was a really interesting book. I liked the author, and even though, I think it was necessarily dense because it covered 1,000 years of history in 250 pages.
It's also just history.
Yeah, true. But he does have some other books that cover shorter periods of time, which I'd be interested in checking out, because then I imagine, it doesn't have to be so densely packed with information when you're not covering such a long time span. And then the other book I finished was, I brought this up in the last episode, Manage Your Day-to-Day. Build your routine, find your focus, and sharpen your creative mind. And this was good. This is one of those
self-help book.
Yeah. This is one of those books where it's like, it tells you mostly things you already know, but it's still good to hear them. Like, I don't know, get your shit done. Basically, keep moving forward. Don't try to be a perfectionist. Do things for their intrinsic value. All these kind of things. I did pick up some tips. The best thing that I picked up from this was for my writing, like, do my writing first before I start my work, right? And even if that's like an hour in the morning, because so many times it'll be like, oh, I'll write in the afternoon, but the day just gets away from you. So I've flipped things around, and I've been getting a good daily word count in. So that helped a lot. It was just kind of like one of those inspirational quotes kind of books, but it gave me what I needed. I needed a little push to get my head out of Space Marine and back into my book. Good. So I got what I needed from it.
Good. Oh, and yes, my book Matrix was one of President Barack Obama's favorite books of 2021. There you go. I was like, it was someone. I was like, oh, it was like one of those people who like have book lists. It was going to bother me, so I had to make sure to tell you.
All right. Well, now I know.
Now we know. So next up, we've got one more psycho to discover what's going on in their brain.
American Psycho, followed by
Piñata. I'm excited for that.
Me too.
That comes out on May 5th. We are doing 2 books in 2 weeks, so it's a little crazy. In order to have it post on Cinco de Mayo, we have to do the following week after American Psycho posts.
Oh, I got a lot of reading then, because that's like 2 hefty books in a row.
Yeah. And then we go back to our every 2 weeks. And so from that point in May, so we're not like then skipping 2 weeks. We're just going to skip 1 week. And then on May 19th, we will be reading The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. Speaking of medieval.
And she is local to, is she from Portland or just Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, she's in the Portland metro area.
Oh, cool. So we get
She's also in our HWA chapter.
That's right. She did
She joined our chapter. Yeah,
that was cool.
She spoke at our meeting. So, and I've gone to a couple of her book events. It helps that she's local. She actually does all of her books. She has events that are local, so she's easy to see. And she does a lot of in conversation with. She's actually coming to, or not coming. She's doing an event at the end of April. She's going to be in conversation with Marcus Cleaver. I think I'm saying his name right. He wrote "We Used to Live Here." Did you read that one? That was a good one.
No.
It's like a house on the cover. Anyway, so he's coming out with a new book, and they're going to talk about it. So
cool.
Moving and shaking in the Portland area.
Yeah, so join us for American Psycho in a couple of weeks, and beyond that, we'll see you then.
Well, if you've made it this far, then we didn't scare you off. Thanks for listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction.
Please rate our podcast, and if you like, follow us on Instagram at Dusk to Dawn Podcast, which is also our Gmail address. Tell us what you liked or didn't like about the show, and let us know if you have any book suggestions. See you next time. Bye.